Right?
Can we run it at him?
Let me just go on there real quick here.
You know what I'd like to do is just welcome everybody to the call. My name is Steve Games, and I'm going to be talking on by request of a couple of people, actually. Not the least of was Corey Shepard and Chuck and a couple others. I'm going to be talking about thinking big this morning. But I thought while we were kind of getting everybody on a call that we might want to run a video that just has to do with something that is going to be in my message this morning, and that's the idea of a team. Because most of what we're going to talk about today is individual, and I just want to make sure that we get fired up. It's Fired Up Friday, right? If it's Fired Up Friday, let's get fired up and let's listen to this man talk to us for a moment about a little bit of football, because my leader loves football. Is he on the line? Is Peter on here?
Peter is on.
I'm here,
Peter?
guys. How's it going?
Peter, we
Good
like
morning.
football, don't we?
Absolutely love it.
We think it says something about the challenges of life, right?
Yes, it does.
All right, we're going to run this video and see if there aren't some challenges in it. Chuck, can you give me the video?
You got it. Go ahead, Adam.
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes to the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb.
Yeah!
1 inch at a time. Now, I can't do it for you. I'm too old. I look around, I see these young faces, and I think, I mean, I made every wrong choice a middle-aged man can make. I pissed away all my money, believe it or not. I chased off anyone who's ever loved me. And lately, I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Hell yeah.
They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You gotta look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're gonna see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're gonna see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. Right? That's a team, gentlemen. Hell yeah. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals. That's football, guys. That's all it is. Now, what are you gonna do?
What do you think?
I like it.
You think it's got some energy behind it, Chuck?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to go play football.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that there's any difference in football and a listening presentation? Absolutely nothing. We win every listening presentation inch by inch. We do it every moment. We claw to win. And if we don't, we won't become the person who will be recognized as a superstar in the residential real estate business, whether we're a team or whether we're an individual. And if you that are building your teams after having built yourself as an individual, if you don't recognize what he was talking about today, your team will fall apart. Thinking big is a really, really interesting set of circumstances. You know, he mentioned being old in there. Did anybody hear him kind of sound like he was a fatalist a little bit? You know, you get old, you lose this, you lose that. You know, I was sitting in a bar in Cabo San Lucas. Anybody ever been in a bar in Cabo San Lucas? I was sitting in a bar in Cabo San Lucas, and I was looking out at the ocean, and my daughter was sitting next to me, and my daughter had just turned 20, and she said, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm kind of thinking about retiring. I'm gonna get out of the game, and I'm gonna retire a little bit." And she said, "Well, Dad," she said, "well, I mean, what are you thinking about doing today? Let's talk about what you're gonna do tomorrow." I said, "Okay, Sarah, what do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I want to go bungee jumping, and I want to do it today." And I said, "Really, Sarah, you want to go bungee jumping?" I said, "Well, I'll come and watch you." She said, "You aren't watching, Dad. You're jumping." Now, I'm a 70-year-old man, overweight, talking about retiring, and this crazy girl wants me to go someplace and bungee jump. Well, let me tell you something about bungee jumping. When they sign people up in Cabo San Lucas to go bungee jumping, they know that most of them are drunk when they agree. So they take the money from them while they're drunk, and then they show up at the bungee site, and out of 60 people on that particular day that had paid their $50 to bungee jump, 2 people bungee jumped. 2 people. 2 people actually got on the edge and jumped off. One of them was my daughter, Sarah, and one of them was me. I'm the oldest son of a gun, I think, that's ever bungee jumped in Cabo San Lucas, and she changed my life with it. And every time you get an opportunity to jump, you should do it. And if you're going to think big, you better think big every single day. Write it down if you can. Think big every day. You know, this little piece right here that we just watched, you know, every single individual had to decide to move forward and to think big. If you could pull up the next slide, Corey, or Chuck, just real quick. We got the next slide coming up.
Yeah, did you get it? There you go.
You know, the let's go past that one. There should be one that says "Thinking Big" right on the front of it. Oop, that's too far too. There it is. Hey, let's talk about thinking big for a minute. How many of you think that, number one, to think big, you have to be prepared every day? That's what we just talked about. You got to want to scrape out that 1 inch. But let's talk about these pictures right here. Can anybody see the guy standing next to me with his arm on my shoulder? Anybody know who that is? That would be the single smartest businessman of my time. That would be Warren Buffett. Now, the odds of me ending up standing next to or with Warren Buffett after graduating last in my class from Glendale High School in the late summer are almost zero. So let me just first of all say, put in your notes, don't ever think there's anything that you can't do. How many of you think that would be achievement? To end up having sold your company to Warren Buffett. It's just an unbelievable opportunity. Look at the sailing pictures there. The kid in the picture with the sunglasses on and the hair and the beard that are still brown, that's me, all right? And the guy in the top with the little visor on that looks kind of silly with the wheel of the America's Cup boat is Dennis Conner, and he's the greatest sailor on the face of the earth. He's the greatest sailor that's ever lived. He's credited as being the greatest sailor that ever lived. Now, why would I want to show you a picture of myself and the greatest sailor that ever lived? Because when I thought about sailing, and I had been a power boater until I was 55 years old, I decided when I went sailing, I wanted to get and sail with the greatest sailor who ever sailed. How do you get those kinds of achievements? Well, one, you think bigger than anybody else, and you decide to be bigger than anybody else, and you make yourself bigger than life. You make yourself 100% memorable. Please write down the word memorable. If you're not memorable, this won't happen. How many of you think it would be fun to have sailed on the America's Cup boats with the world's greatest sailor? By the way, there's something interesting about Dennis Conner. If you know him or not, you might look him up. At one time in his career, he became the greatest American loser in history. He's called the comeback kid. He lost the America's Cup. He made worldwide news. He was talked about as the biggest loser in history when he lost the America's Cup to the Australians. The day that Dennis Conner came back, and remember, it's not possible to win without losing. It's just not possible. Dennis Conner left. He lost the America's Cup. Nobody had any idea at that time. Sailing was a little guy sport. Nobody knew what it was. And when he lost the cup, everybody started to focus on sailing. When he won it back, more people watched Dennis Conner win the America's Cup back in the year that he won it back than watched the Super Bowl. Why? Because he made himself memorable. Let me ask you a question. Are you memorable? Write down, today I will start doing things that will make me memorable. Now, how many people think that there will be some disappointments in life? I can't see your hands, but I imagine that everybody knows there'll be some disappointments in life. So just about the time you start to win, somebody's going to tell you that you can't. I'm just going to give you an example of thinking big. How big can you think? I said this in 1984. In 1984, I told everybody that I knew that I was going to be the #1 realtor in the state of California in history. #1 realtor in the state of California in history. At the time that I said that, I was doing with 4 agents and myself, or 5 people, I was doing $100 million worth of business in San Diego County. That's it. $100 million a year. Now, we have agents in the company that will be honored this week for doing more than $100 million in business themselves. I was doing $100 million in business, and I set a goal. And I said, I will be the #1 real estate agent and broker in California history. 14 years later, I had a company that had 7,000 agents, 145 locations. I did 30 billion in business, and I was the third largest real estate company in America and the largest real estate company in California history. I sold that company to Warren Buffett, right? And I did it with people telling me from the day I started through that entire 14 years, you cannot do this. You cannot make it happen. I thought big. Don't expect the people around you to think as big as you think. Write it down. Do not expect the people to support you all the time. Sometimes they'll jump in. Sometimes you can get the energy behind a particular event, but most of the time it's very difficult. Don't expect them to do that for you. You know, there's two bigger real estate companies. There's two names in the real estate business that were bigger than my company called Prudential California Realty. Two. Now, did I perhaps think too small? I want to warn you that there are people who will help you think smaller than you need to think. I believe that my achievement was limited by those people that were around me that kept saying, look what you've accomplished. You've gone so far. Why can't you relax a little bit? Take the word relax out of your vocabulary. Relax is not going to help you become. If you want to set a goal to be the #1 real estate agent in San Diego history, you might say California, and you might just make the decision that there's going to be people around you that don't believe you can do it. How many of you think that thinking big is hard? I promise you that it's hard. And I promise you, let's go to the next slide, Corey. If you can take a look at what Oprah Winfrey had to say. Chuck?
Yes.
There you go. There is no greater gift you can give or receive than to honor your calling. You know what? It is why we are born and how we become most truly alive. Oprah did things that no one ever imagined she could have done in her time. It was unbelievable. So when she says there is no greater gift, right, than to honor your calling, what is your calling? So I'm going to ask you this morning, is your calling the real estate business? Now, Peter and Chuck and the company owners and everybody are going to say to themselves, oh my God, what's he talking about? Is he telling people that are in the real estate business that maybe they're in the wrong business? Maybe they are. Maybe it's not your business. Maybe you don't have the passion and the love that's necessary. Maybe it's not your calling. But I'll tell you what, it's time to find out. It's absolutely time to find out. You need to take tomorrow on as a day that you will no longer be average. You will no longer be okay. Even if you're terrific, you have to make a decision tomorrow to be better, and you're going to have to make that decision every single day. Every single day, and you're going to have to walk out and risk something that no one else is willing to risk. You know, if you go to the next slide, please. You're going to have a vision. I've got a gentleman here that maybe you'll recognize his name. His name is Ralph Lauren. By the way, some people mispronounce that. I did, and he told me personally, you're mispronouncing my name. How is that for embarrassing? You know, so when I say Ralph Lauren, so does Ralph Lauren. I got to tell you, I know this man personally, and I want to use him as an example of what you need to do if you're going to think big. How many of you think that Ralph Lauren has gotten big? It's unbelievable, his success. Wouldn't you agree? As an American designer, as a male American designer, he's probably unparalleled in what he does. And I remember sitting with Ralph, and I was sitting with him, and we were talking about how do we think big and how do you become successful? Read his quote. I don't design clothes, I design dreams. I don't sell real estate. I sell dreams. My God, if every one of you understands that you are in charge of people's dreams, that every day when you get up, you can modify and affect somebody's life so that they will either be a success or a failure. You've got to take that responsibility on, and you've got to take it on personally. And you have to absolutely believe every day that what makes it worth doing what you do is the dreams that you are creating. Let's make sure that happens. Ralph's an interesting guy. When I was sitting with him, he said, Steve, do you think I've experienced failure? He said, we both have, haven't we? And we were working on something that we've been very successful with together. And Ralph said, you know, we have the same roots. And I said, what are those roots? And he said, well, he said, I was a tie salesman. All of us were salespeople. All of us chose to become designers and all of these things after we had actually learned how to sail. And he said, and one day I was thrown out of the tie shops that I had gotten my accounts into. And I was so desperate that I went and sat in a coffee shop and drank a cup of coffee. And he said, I'm going to fail. He said he was absolutely going to fail. By the way, his name was Ralph Lipschitz. That's a beauty, huh? He was not actually born Ralph Lauren. But what Ralph said was to me, he said, I hit the darkest day of my life, and I had to have something that picked me back up. And he said, the only thing that got me to go again was my fear of having to tell my father that I had failed because he believed that I was going to. How many of you have people in your life that didn't think you were going to be a success, or still don't think you're going to be a success, or don't think that you are? You have to ignore that noise. You have to work past that noise. You have to get up every morning and say, by God, I can do it, and no one can make a failure out of me. That's what Ralph Lauren did. If you can go to the next slide, this is an interesting person. Renee Brown is somebody that nobody heard of for a long time, and then one day she got a challenge. And I'm going to suggest to you that if you're thinking big and that you're going to get big, that you have to take on every single challenge that is offered to you. Every opportunity, you have to reach out and grasp the opportunity. So Renee was called in Houston or in Texas somewhere anyway, and she was asked if she'd like to do a TED Talk. TED Talks are pretty famous now today, but she said, well, I don't know, TED Talk, I'm shy. She is, by the way, an introvert. She's now one of the most famous introverts on earth. She said, I don't know whether I can do the TED Talk or not. And the person on the other end of the phone was encouraging to her and said, no, we want you to do the TED Talk. Just talk about anything you want. She actually thought about refusing. I want you to know that if she had refused, none of us would have ever heard of her, ever. So in your notes, in your mind, wherever you are, accept every challenge. Accept and look for challenges. Now, when you're accepting and looking for challenges, if you go to the next slide, don't go to the next slide yet. Stick with Renee for a second. I just want to tell you something. She did do the TED Talk and became famous. She could have rejected it on that day and none of us would have ever heard about her. And she thought to herself, when she was done with the TED Talk, she went online to take a look at what it was that people said about her. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of negative comments. They told her that she probably ought to lose some weight before she went public again. They told her all kinds of horrible things about who she was and why the TED Talk wasn't good. And then all of a sudden, there were millions of people beyond the people who doubted her who said, God, she was great. and she started to get confidence. You have to get out there and try to make it happen. And by the way, about the time that you go out and give your first speech or you go out and lose a listing presentation, how many of you ever lost a listing presentation? I think this is what it feels like. This is a glass of water. It's cold. It's harsh. It's difficult to deal with. And if you throw it in your face like that, it's extremely refreshing.
Epic.
But if you do that, what you find is that you can take it. You can take the negative feedback. You can deal with somebody saying, oh, that's a bad idea. How many of you have ever heard or given your best, given somebody an idea and had them say to you, I'm cleaning up my books over here, had them say to you, that's a bad idea. And then someday, 2 years or 3 years or 5 years later, what happened? Somebody took your idea that somebody discouraged you about and turned it into a multi-million or $1 billion idea. Look at what happened. I sold a real estate company that was nationally recognized, and I made a lot of money. No question about it. I have no regrets whatsoever. But what just happened with the Compass company? Anybody have any idea what the founder of Compass just got a check for? Anybody, Chuck, you know how much you got a check for?
I don't.
He just cashed a check for $440 million. $440 million he got when his company went public. His company last year lost $275 million and is 6.5% negative on everything that they do, and they've never made a dime. And you know who told him he couldn't make it? Me. Huh? How'd I do on that one, guys? I told him he couldn't make it. Who knows where it'll end up? But he's got his $440 million, doesn't he? So if you let people discourage you, it's really a sad thing. So Renee said to know failure, let's look at this. You're going to know failure if you're brave with your life. You have to be brave with your life. Let's go on to the next slide. This is an interesting piece. Does anybody remember Condoleezza Rice? She's one of the most brilliant women in America, and certainly not immediate history, but not very far in the past. And she said something, and I'm just going to paraphrase it here. Surprises and serendipity are a part of everybody's life. You know what? About the time you start to feel like they threw water in your face and things are not going to work, you should be looking for that serendipity thing that's going to happen to you. That in fact, it is that little piece that comes in if you're prepared to take advantage of it that can change your career forever. So I just suggest to you that don't forget that there is an element of absolute chance in our lives, and it makes us happy. And look out every day for that happy moment, or you can't think big. Because what happens if you're thinking big and all of a sudden, right, you just start taking in the negative and you're not looking for what Condoleezza Rice is talking about here, you're not going to have success. So stay on track, do it every day, make it happen. Renee Brown again says on the next slide, she says, courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. How many of you have ever felt helpless because you didn't know how you were going to control the outcome? I've had people, and I'm just going to relate it to a listing presentation. I've had people call me and say, hey, Steve, I've never done a $3 million or a $5 million or a $10 million deal. Can you go with me? And I say, absolutely, I'll go with you. No question about it. And so I get ready to go and I get in a car with them and we're driving to the listing presentation. And they say to me, well, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. You know, I probably won't get this deal. I probably won't get this deal. Think about that. If I walk into the door of somebody's estate with the attitude that I probably won't get it, and when I asked them, why do you think you won't get it? They would say, well, they would use some names of people who have worked for me, did work for me, or I've gone on listing presentations before and helped them become a success. They'd give me names of people who had 5 great listings or 6 great listings. Remember, if you don't believe that you can outshine the other people by just hard work, effort, and overcommitting, you won't get the listing. So how do you do something when it's your first time? You do more, you spend more money, you commit more, and you work harder than anybody else every single day. And as Peter is saying, and I think they said it in the football slide in the beginning here, you jump to be a success. You have to take that next step. You have to get out there and make it happen. It's just that simple. And I encourage you to do that. Let's skip a couple of these little things and go on to, how about a guy named Elon Musk? If we can pull up Elon Musk's slide, Elon said this. He said, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. How many of you have been talked out of doing something because somebody said, I don't know, somebody in a boardroom or somebody on your team or someone in your company or someone at the desk next to you said, damn, I don't think that can be done. You know, this man says what? You want to think big? What does he say he's going to do? He's going to put the first vehicle manned in history on Mars. Do you know how many people thought he was already on Mars when he said that? He was absolutely so looked at like a maniac. And what has he done? He's done incredible things. And he says, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. How many of you think when I said to somebody that I'm going to build the largest real estate company in California and I had no capital, all right, and I had 5 real estate agents, that people would tell me they thought I was going to make it? Nobody. My own partner said to me, Steve, could you please maybe tone it down a little bit? You're scaring people. I'm going to make a suggestion to some of you. You need to scare yourself and everyone around you. But before you do it, I'm going to ask you to do something that's really, really important. Make sure that you tell your family what your plan is, even if you scare them. And make sure they understand how hard you're going to work at it and how committed you have to be. Because if you try to go somewhere without the loving, caring people that are around you, and I'm talking about your significant other, your husband, your wife, your life partner, whoever it is, your brother, your sister, your parents, all of those people are influencers in your life. And if they don't understand that your goal is set to be what? Think big, win, eclipse everybody else, then they can't help you get there. And they won't enjoy the joy of you making it go there. They have to understand how hard you're trying. Take your children to work with you every once in a while when we can go back out. Let's talk about what Elon Musk says is when it seems impossible, that's the time that somebody who's thinking big can make it happen. You know, I'm going to sit for just a second and I'm going to read something to you. The next slide, you can read it yourself, but I want you to understand a couple of things that old history can prove to us. Imagine this guy, his name is Teddy Roosevelt. And he said something that I think should make the rest of the morning just about nothing but perhaps questions from the audience and from Chuck to me about what it is that helps you think big every day. But I'm going to read what Teddy Roosevelt had to say. And by God, one of you is probably going to notice, I threw water on my glasses, and it's going to look like I'm crying. And you know what? I probably am. And I want you to know that I'm crying out. And I'm crying out for a reason. I'm crying out because I see too many people every day in the youth of America, in the age of America, in all of us in moderation. We are just not working hard enough. Let me see what Teddy Roosevelt had to say. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man has stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who never knew victory or defeat." Wow. Wow. To never know victory or defeat is to find a way not to go on the listing presentation. Is to find a way not to make the calls. Is to say, oh, I don't think door knocking works. I don't think cold calling works. I don't think prospecting works. I'm not going to pay any attention to that technology stuff because real estate is a personal business. Well, real estate is a personal business. Of course it is. But without technology, we cannot create the amount of business that's necessary to be a success. The only failures in the business today are those who won't change, won't grasp technology, won't figure out that a computer can do for you in 1 minute what you can possibly not do in a lifetime. I'm just suggesting that there are opportunities out there. And you know what? If you're thinking big, you've got to be able to write. If you've got a pen anywhere near you or you've got your calculator, just real fast, without hesitation, write down the number 1 billion. Write down the number 1 billion. I don't see anybody moving on the picture, so write down the number 1 billion. Do it as fast. Don't think about it. Just write down 1 billion. So you know what? If you can't write 1 billion without thinking about it, and you can't get the right number of zeros, you're never going to be a billionaire. You're just not going to do it. So let's practice a few things in life. Let's practice working harder than the competition. Somebody said to me, profit. In fact, I read it. There was an economist who said in his book, the most famous economics book that education has ever had, was written by John Maynard Keynes. And in the beginning of the book, it said, profit is directly proportionate to risk. Profit is directly proportionate to risk. Risk is about time. Risk is about money. Risk is about effort. Risk is about, enthusiasm, it's all those things, but profit is directly proportionate to risk. I'm going to suggest to any of you who are feeling that you haven't achieved in the real estate business what you want to achieve to start risking more, start investing more time, more energy, and certainly more money in your marketing, perhaps in your staff. There are people who have proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that even when they work alone, if they have a staff of 1 or 2 or 3 people and they bring them on board to support them, the busy work becomes somebody else's, and the opportunity to think big is far, far better. So let's get out there and think big. I have a slide that I'd like you to pull up. That's the final message on it. This is a tombstone for my father. And I thought maybe I could make a point. Number one, do you see what's over his head there? Look at the top of the picture. It's the American flag where thinking big is possible. It's in a military graveyard here in San Diego. And it says that his name was Thomas Van Norman Games and that he was a first lieutenant in the United States Army. Wow, that's just a very few words for a guy who fought in World War II and fought in the bloodiest battles in history for freedom. Very short. Very, very short. It says that he lived 92 years. Doesn't say that he was a native of California, but he was. Doesn't say that he won a lot of medals. It only mentions one medal that he won because he was hurt twice. He won 2 Purple Hearts. And then it says something that I think should make us be able to think big and to be better. It says in there, here lies a contributor to the American dream. We're in an industry that contributes to the American dream every single day. We create beauty and magnificence in life. We sell people the most important single thing they can possibly have. And my father told me when I was rich, he told me it doesn't matter unless you contributed to the American dream. And I said to him, Father, I'm rich because I contributed to the American dream. Don't you for a moment get selfish. Don't you believe that it's about you. It's about the team. It's about everyone. It's about the brand. It's about the company. We need to lean on each other every day, and we need to ask each other for help, because without it, there is no future that allows us to think big. Think big in our personal life, think big in our business life, and think big in our spiritual life, and everything will come to us. And remember, failure is just a part of the dream. The last slide that I'd ask you to pull up maybe is the slide with a song called The Impossible Dream on it. Do we have that? So maybe these words should be an affirmation for you. Maybe they should be something that you think of in every challenge, but I'm going to read them to you because I'm just going to read them to you. The impossible dream, to dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to go where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are so weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far. My God, if we just use that as a credo for American life every day, we could double our business. We could think bigger, we could be bigger, and we could contribute more than anyone else in the history of the real estate business. I'm just getting fired up. I'm not going to own the largest residential real estate company in America. Peter Mendiola is going to, and he's going to own it because you and I and every one of us helped him build it with that kind of attitude and commitment. God bless America. You got it, Chuck.
All right. Well, yes, everybody, I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you for the passion. I don't know about you guys, but isn't it crazy when you look at Steve and you listen to Steve and all the stuff that he's accomplished, and you just realize how emotional he is and how serious he takes everything that he does. And I don't know, I'm gonna be rattled all day now, Steve.
Thank you, Chuck.
It was just fantastic. And Steve, can I ask you just two more questions? I hate to take this down a different road from where you've already taken it. But you said something to Mary Beth and I at the end of the other night. You told us a little bit about your story. And I understand, that it's about passion, it's about doing what's right, it's about being motivated, everything that you said. But you had talked a little bit about the dreams that you wanted to accomplish and the things that you did. And with everything, you did some big stuff down in Mexico personally with having this attitude that you have and this persona that you have and selling your company, doing all those things. You did what I think was one of the most amazing things, what you built, what you created, what you were able to do, what you showed other people is possible by doing yourself. And when you told me the story of what you did down in La Paz, Mexico, it motivated me because you've done everything the right way. You've had this attitude, but would you mind sharing what you did down there and what you've created?
Chuck, I'd like to share, first of all, if I could, just a moment on how I got there.
Please.
There was a war called the Vietnam War, and I was a part of it, and I was a part of it for 8 years. And after the war was winding down, I came back on an aircraft carrier under the Golden Gate Bridge. Pretty amazing to have those few Americans who supported the military during that time standing on the Golden Gate Bridge waving American flags. And I remember standing in my uniform. I was making, I believe, $162 a month for defending my country. And as we went under the bridge, there was a boat down below with some topless dancers on it. It was a beautiful yacht, and it had topless dancers on it to entice the sailors to come spend their money on their return from Vietnam. And I remember looking down at the yacht, and I said to my two friends standing on either side of me in their uniforms at attention, I said to them, I'm going to have one of those someday. And, both of them thought I was talking about the topless dancers. I was talking about the yacht. They couldn't even conceive that. They couldn't understand that this military kid that was coming back from Vietnam was believing that he could own a yacht like the one that was in front of us. So I bought the yacht, and I worked hard, and I got to the point where I could afford a yacht. And then I sailed it to Mexico, which is my favorite place in the world. And I sailed it down there, and I ended up on the Sea of Cortez on the Baja side on the Sea of Cortez side of the Baja, and I saw a beach there, and the beach was about a mile long of white sand, and there was nothing for miles in either direction. And I thought to myself, just like I thought I should own a yacht, I said to myself, I'd like to have a home here. I'd like to build a home here sometime. And that was in 1981. And I set out to try to figure out how to make enough money to make that happen. And one day I bought a piece of property there. And again, thinking big is an important thing. I didn't buy 2 acres. I didn't buy 1 lot. I bought 4,700 acres of land, 7.5 miles of oceanfront. And I set about to build myself a house. And I took every bit of energy and every bit of time and everything that I could do to drive my business in order to satisfy my desire to own this house. And I stood with an architect, a young architect from La Paz, or he was a graduate of the University of Guadalajara in architecture, young man who had studied the greats of Mexican architecture. And I stood on the property with him by the ocean and I said, I'd like to build a house here. And he started making some little drawings in the sand. And I said, no, I don't think that's big enough. And we kept drawing, and my wife and myself, we drew, and we finally came up with a house. And I think any one of you that knows square footage knows that square footage isn't everything, but a big house is a big house. And so by the time we were done adding all the things that we wanted, the house that we built turned out to be 47,000 square feet. 47,000 square feet on 4,300 acres. And I never, ever let anybody tell me I couldn't do it. I have had Ralph Lauren. I have had the president of Mexico. I have had governors. I have had some of the greatest people on earth at that house. And I have to tell you that I don't think that, I remember one Mexican saying to me, he owns I think it's the Corona Beer Company. He said, "Gringo, you are completely insane." And I said, "Thank you very much." If you're not memorable, if you can't see it big enough, you can't own it and you can't build it, Chuck. And you know what? I celebrated my 60th birthday there. 25 of my friends jumped out of airplanes with me, landed in the sand barefoot on the beach. God bless the dream and the ability to think big.
Wow. I mean, isn't that impressive, Janie? I mean, just hearing that, and how many bedrooms are in the house?
22.
22 bedrooms. And how many swimming pools?
There's 6.
And you still own that property, right?
Yes, I do.
Man.
And one of them, by the way, one of the swimming pools is 180 feet long.
That's 180.
The master bedroom actually floats out into the pool.
That's 60 yards. Anyways, that's awesome. Unbelievable. I had to share that part. You guys had to hear that, because when he told me about that place, we about fell out of our chair, right, Mary Beth? It was like, holy smokes. But I have a few things. Corey, do you want me to go ahead and sum this thing up? It looks like we got about 2 minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great, Chuck. And I just want to say thank you to Steve, because when we asked him to do this Fired Up Friday, without hesitation, he said, yes. I don't know if I'll be quite prepared. And I said, Steve, you're always prepared. And he said, yes, because I can never say no to an opportunity.
That's right here on my sheet. It's right here on my sheet. Never say no to an opportunity. All right, so here's a few. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go, Chuck.
All right, so here we go. First off, I have bungee jump every time you get a chance. I have to think big. You also have to be prepared. Make yourself bigger than life and be memorable. I think that's a big one. Make yourself bigger than life and be memorable. And that you've created everything that you have with still having those people that are saying you can't. And there's always going to be people that are going to try to attempt to help you think small. And you have to identify them and know who they are.
Absolutely.
I love this one, Oprah. No greater gift than to honor your calling. And some people do know what they're calling. I love that one. ignore the noise. And ignore the noise, because there's always going to be those distractors and negatives. Accept and look for every challenge. Hey, and guess what? If you throw water in your face, people, you can take it. Steve proved that. Steve proved that. And vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. I love that. Love
hey, Chuck.
That. Yes.
Chuck, make sure you take your jacket off before you throw water in your face.
Okay.
I've destroyed a couple of them.
Good to know. And I guess what the last one here is, when something is important enough, Elon Musk, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. And that's probably one of the biggest ones that I'm going to remember is when something is important enough, you do it even when the odds are not in your favor. Get your family support, and profit is directly proportionate to risk. And we are right there at 9:30. So good stuff, right, guys? I'd say one of the best Fired Up Fridays we've ever had. Hands down. Look at the clapping, Steve. People love you, man. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And you know what? That was a great, great Fired Up Friday. So anyways, thank you, guys. Get out there. Have a great weekend. Go make something big happen. And go bungee jump this weekend. Do something unexpected. All right, guys.